Welcome to another Coaster Kev video. Today I'll be talking about my journey to becoming a roller coaster enthusiast and my travels so far. Enjoy! For those of you who don't know, a coaster enthusiast is a crazy person who travels around the world riding roller coasters and drives huge amount of miles to get from park to park. All joking aside, I just wanted to thank El Toro Ryan for letting me use his off-ride video. My story starts very early, growing up in Southern California. As a kid, I would often go to Knott's Berry Farm, getting season passes for what seemed like most of my childhood. When I was about 8, my brother took me on my first big roller coaster with Montezuma's Revenge. I remember being so scared to go upside down, but he pressured me into it. As we got seated and strapped in, only restrained by a lap bar, I remember the anxiety building. Then all of a sudden, the lap bars pop open and I'm freaking out. Luckily, the staff assured me that everything was fine, and then we were ready to go. As we launched out of the station at over 50 miles per hour, passing through the decorative lit-up circle and into the loop and up the spike, I remember all the adrenaline pumping as we made our way backwards through the station and up the other spike. That feeling of weightlessness or airtime gave me butterflies. As we came back to Earth and came into the station, I was ecstatic. I immediately wanted to go again. Ever since then, I loved roller coasters and would frequent Six Flags Magic Mountain and continued going to Knott's. Growing up, I loved going on Ghost Rider, and it was definitely my favorite roller coaster, but I know there was something more out there. In 2019, I decided to jump fully in and attend Coaster Mania on a last-minute whim through some random enthusiast selling 2 tickets on Twitter, since he bought the wrong ones. Luckily for me, the other person who bought the second ticket ended up meeting up with me to hang out and help make the trip less confusing. Going to Cedar Point always looked amazing, with it being praised as the self-proclaimed coaster capital of the world, and their airtime-filled Still Vengeance sweetened the deal. The all-day event was amazing, and was filled with so much exclusive ride time, or ERT, that I was easily able to do all the roller coasters throughout the 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. event. It was an amazing time not having to wait in lines at the beginning and end of our day. I was in heaven. I even made a friend out of it, as we ran from ride to ride all day long and traveled more than 20 miles going up and down the peninsula. All in all, it was a thrilling day, but very exhausting. I would definitely recommend it if you only have a day to spend there and get all the credits. After that, I was hooked. I started looking to other places I could go on a budget that I could get the most bang for my buck. However, I didn't plan anything else for the rest of the year since I had a honeymoon planned with my wife in Switzerland. Unfortunately, I had no plans for 2020 for obvious reasons, but I started getting into the hottest thing since Roller Coaster Tycoon, Planet Coaster. I started following Channel 5 Gaming and loved what I saw and wanted in, but I didn't have a gaming PC. Luckily, they released a console version that I started playing and entering in contests to compare to others and get critiqued and improve my parks. I continue to play today and will release some videos and shorts on some of my creations in the future. With parks opened up again, I ended up getting a SeaWorld and Knott's Platinum Pass for 2021, so I could do a bunch of trips and boost my credit count, which was just below 100 at the time. My first trip was going back to Coaster Mania with my wife and sister-in-law. Again, it was an amazing time, but I thought the ERT was not as good as my first time. We ended up staying in Hotel Breakers, which was very convenient, especially for taking a break in the middle of the day to last a long, hot day. Top Thrill Dragster was my wife's favorite. Luckily, they got to ride it before the accident, and hopefully again soon for the reimagining, which looks to be very exciting. My second trip of the year was to San Antonio, Texas. I started off my trip with SeaWorld and was amazed to see how empty the park was, even in July. I was excited to try all the new rides, especially Texas Stingray and Steel Eel. Steel Eel was, by far, my favorite ride there, and I was able to marathon it with multiple back-to-back rides. I ended up getting my 100th coaster credit on Wavebreaker, the rescue coaster, even though I thought it would be at my next park. SeaWorld San Antonio was a beautiful park, but didn't take up too much of the day, so I planned to go to ZDT's, a small family fun center that has a shuttle wooden coaster that I was curious to try. Their all-day ride and game wristband was pretty reasonable, and I was able to ride Switchback in every seat quite easily. I highly recommend going out to ZDT so you can ride Switchback, which is only about 30 to 40 minutes out of your way from SeaWorld Orlando. It's not the most intense, but it's a really outstanding experience. The next day, I went to Six Flags Fiesta Texas, which I had heard about the beautiful scenery that was unlike any other Six Flags park. It did not disappoint besides Batman and Poltergeist being closed. It was definitely much more crowded than SeaWorld, but understandably so. Even though I thought Iron Rattler would be the best there, I thought Wonder Woman was better, but it may have been from the hype of it being my first single rail coaster by RMC. However, I still thought Twisted Colossus was better than both of them. I'm excited to get out there again to see if anything changes. My third trip of the 2021 was to Orlando. I was very excited to see some of the world's best parks, but I wouldn't make it to the Disney parks, and still have yet to do so. Our first stop was to the Universal Resort. We started at Studios, with Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket being my favorite, next to the Mummy, which had a fun video that I didn't expect at the end, since I thought it would be like the other one in Hollywood. Additionally, Diagon Alley was amazing, but it took a second pass to find it. I also thought the Gringotts ride was way better than Forbidden Journey, since it told a better story and had cooler special effects. The next day we went to Islands of Adventure. I was extremely excited to ride on Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure, as well as Velocicoaster, and they didn't disappoint. We were lucky enough to spend our whole day there and ride multiple times using the single rider line. Velocicoaster ended up being one of my top favorite roller coasters, and still is today. The following day, we went to SeaWorld Orlando for the first time. I finally got to see how good Mako was, but it didn't wow me like I thought it would. Granted, it was fun, but it wasn't super forceful like Goliath. It's definitely fun, smooth, and graceful though. Overall, SeaWorld left me wanting more, especially seeing Icebreaker there, but not yet open. On my final day, we went to Busch Gardens Tampa. It was probably the most overwhelming since the park seemed huge. I had a blast getting on all the rides except Shikara and Iron Gwazi, which wasn't open yet. I loved Falcon's Fury, with the amazing tilting as well as the forcefulness of Montu. I remember the trip feeling like there was something missing, and I knew Iron Gwazi would change that. It was extremely hot, so the giraffe bar was a welcome retreat to grab a cold one while watching the Serengeti animals and safaris drive through. Busch Gardens Tampa was a great way to finish the trip. In December 2021, we found some cheap tickets to go to Atlanta, so I knew I wanted to go to Six Flags in Dollywood. It was fun to learn that Six Flags Over Georgia was the second Six Flags park, and had the carousel of the old Riverview Park that my grandpa worked at in Chicago back in the 1930s. I really liked the look of this park, and I fell in love with Goliath. It immediately became my favorite B&M hyper. I felt like I was going on a wild ride in comparison to Mako, which was so graceful. Additionally, Twisted Cyclone was wild and fun, albeit a short RMC. Definitely my second best park. Batman at this park was also packed with a punch, and was probably my favorite I've ridden for its clone. Overall, it was a great park, but didn't take too long, probably since it was the off-season. It gave me plenty of time to go to the Coca-Cola Museum and try all the tastings there, which I also recommend doing. Next day, we made our way to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, so we could go to Dollywood. I didn't know too much of what to expect besides Lightning Rod, Cinnamon Bread, and Dolly Parton, but was so impressed with this park. From the amazing Christmas lights to the fun coaster lineup, this park blew me away and remains my favorite park for the amazing theming and ride lineup. Thunderhead was a ride that I hadn't heard much on, but I thought it was amazing and gave Ghost Rider a run for its money as my favorite wooden coaster. Its intense laterals and airtime were action-packed and tons of fun. With a combination of that Lightning Rod, the park had a wonderful 1-2 punch. My only disappointment was just Mystery Mine, which I thought was beautifully themed, but somewhat boring besides the finale. Another highlight was Tennessee Tornado, which I thought was extremely quirky and oddly shaped inversions, but a lot of fun. However, it was quite short. Luckily, the lines were pretty empty on our trip, and we enjoyed a full day followed by a few hours the next day before ending our trip back in Atlanta. This concludes part 1 of my coaster journey. Follow up next week for part 2 of my coaster journey. We'll be talking about what I've done in 2022 and what I'm planning to be going to for this summer. If you have any questions about my travels so far, please like, comment, and subscribe on this video. And with that, this is Kev, and I'm coasting out. Have a good one. Special shout out to Coaster Force, El Toro Ryan, and Knott's Berry Farm for the use of their video footage.